I had never been nervous about going to the dentist. The routine cleanings and checkups had always been mundane, almost relaxing, until I met Dr. Larkin. It started off innocently enough. I needed a new dentist and his office was highly rated. I was impressed by the sleek modern decor when I walked in, and the receptionist was warm and welcoming. Dr. Larkin himself was friendly, even charming, with the air of confidence that put me at ease. He took his time with me during the initial consultation, explaining that he preferred to run a few more advanced tests than what other offices typically did. I figured it was just thorough care. I didn't mind. After all, my teeth had always been my pride. The first procedure was a deep routine cleaning. He explained he would take a detailed x-ray afterward to make sure everything was in order. But when I asked for a copy of the images, he said they would be kept in his files for further analysis. He seemed insistent that I didn't need to worry about it. The following visits were more of the same, a cleaning, a checkup, some small fillings, but each time I noticed something odd. My mouth always felt emptier after each appointment. It was subtle at first, an imperceptible gap between two teeth here, a space where there hadn't been one before. At first I thought maybe I was imagining things, or that it was just the side effects of the procedures. But after the third visit, I noticed a small tooth was completely gone. I mentioned it to Dr. Larkin during my next appointment, but he brushed it off with a smile, claiming it must have been due to natural wear on my teeth. He even offered me a new advanced treatment plan for tooth restoration. His eyes twinkled strangely when he spoke of it, and for the first time, I felt a ripple of unease. It wasn't until the fourth visit that things truly escalated. As I reclined in the chair, Dr. Larkin's demeanor shifted. He was quieter, more focused, and his hands moved with unnerving precision. I felt something sharp against my gum, and instinctively I tried to pull away. But his grip on my jaw was firm, his eyes locked onto mine, his voice smooth and cold. "You don't need to worry, just relax." I wanted to scream, but my mouth was full of his instruments. He pressed harder, causing sharp pain, but I couldn't make a sound. It was then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. His assistant, who had always been there, was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't make sense of it, but there was a low buzzing noise, like machinery running in the background, and a cold draft around my neck. Suddenly, a sharp pain erupted from the back of my mouth. Something was being pulled. I tried to jerk back, but the chair locked into place.
"What are you doing?"
I gasped, but the words came out muffled. Dr. Larkin didn't answer. His hands were working with a disturbing precision, as if he were collecting something. I felt my body go rigid with panic. Then, a strange metallic taste filled my mouth, and I realized I couldn't feel one of my molars anymore. It was gone. Vanished. Dr. Larkin leaned in close, his breath cold against my ear. "You have such perfect teeth," he whispered. "So rare. I'm sure you won't mind if I keep them for research." Terror surged through me. The moment I felt my mouth was clear of tools, I wrenched myself from the chair. My heart pounded in my chest. My tongue ran over my gums, feeling the rawness where my teeth had once been. I stumbled out of the office, desperate to leave. The next day, I woke up with a horrible sensation in my mouth, a kind of empty, aching void where my teeth should have been. The bruising was gone, but I felt a strange weight in my jaw, like something was missing, more than just a tooth. I called Dr. Larkin's office, but there was no answer. I checked his website, and there was no trace of the office I had visited. It was as if it had been erased from existence. But then I found something online, a whisper of a dark rumor about a dentist who had been running illegal experiments on patients, harvesting teeth for scientific purposes. I read the chilling details. I realized I was just another victim in his twisted obsession. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I swear I see something in my eyes, a glint of metal that wasn't there before, and I can't shake the feeling that Dr. Larkin isn't done with me yet. I just hope I'm not the next one he's waiting for. It started like any other routine dental appointment. I had been to Dr. Hemlock's office several times before. The clinic was tucked away on a quiet street in the city, hidden between an old bookstore and a pharmacy. The building itself looked like it hadn't been renovated in decades. dark wood paneling, creaky floors, and dim lighting. But the dentist had a reputation for being the best in the area, and I never had a problem with him before. That day, I arrived for my cleaning and checkup, the usual. The receptionist, a young woman with a tired smile, checked me in and directed me to the waiting area. It felt like any other dental office, sterile, quiet, the faint scent of bleach hanging in the air. But something felt off that day. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it was the flickering light above the door to the exam room, or the strange quiet that hung in the air. But my instincts were on edge. I told myself it was nothing. When Dr. Hemlock finally came in, his face was smooth and calm as ever. He was a tall man with slick black hair and glasses that always seemed to reflect the light just enough to make his eyes look dark and unreadable. He greeted me with his usual charm and led me to the chair. "How have you been, Mr. Turner?" he asked, his voice smooth and polite, but there was something in his tone that sent a small shiver down my spine. "Any discomfort in your teeth?" "Not really," I said, settling back into the chair. "Just the usual checkup." As he leaned over me, his gloved hands working with the dental tools, I felt a sudden wave of dizziness. It was subtle at first, just a momentarily blur, a feeling that I couldn't focus. I assumed it was just the nervousness of being at the dentist. But then everything changed. But before I could say anything, Dr. Hemlock injected something into my gum. It wasn't the usual numbing shot. This felt deeper, more intense. My head spun, and I felt a coldness spread down my neck. I blinked rapidly, trying to stay conscious, but the room around me began to fade. The next thing I remember was waking up. I was no longer in a familiar dental chair. I was laying on a cold, metal table in a small, dimly lit room. Panic surged through me as I tried to move, but my arms and legs felt heavy, as if they were shackled to the table. My mouth was dry, and the taste of something bitter lingered on my tongue. The door to the room creaked open, and Dr. Hemlock stepped inside, his face now devoid of the friendly mask he had always worn. His eyes were cold, calculating, and his smile twisted into something that felt more predator than comforting. "You're awake," he said with his voice eerily calm. I was starting to worry. What is this?" I tried to speak, but my voice sounded muffled, distant. The drugs hadn't worn off completely. "This is where the real work begins," he said with a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "You see, over the years, I've realized that most people don't understand the true potential of a healthy set of teeth. They're not just for chewing or smiling. They're a key to unlocking something much more fascinating." My heart hammered in my chest as I struggled against my restraints. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "What are you going to do to me?" I managed to gasp. "Oh, nothing painful," he said with a sickening smile. "At least not yet. I simply need to take a few samples." But before I could process his words, he turned and walked toward a table in the corner. There, under a harsh light, were rows upon rows of gleaming teeth. Human teeth, some yellowed, some freshly extracted. The sight made my stomach churn, but I couldn't look away. I was paralyzed with fear. "You see," Dr. Hemlock continued, picking up strange-looking tools from the table, "I've been experimenting with ways to enhance the human body using the very materials that people take for granted. Teeth, bones. They can be much more than just functional. They can be a key to evolution." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as he turned back to face me, the tool in his hands now gleaming with a sickening light. He took a step closer. "I've been collecting them for years," he said softly. "But you? You're special. I've been watching you for a while. Mr. Turner, your teeth are perfect. Exactly what I need." "No," I whispered, terror rising in my throat. "Please, no." But he was already strapping a mask over my face, the edges of my vision blurring again. The last thing I saw before everything went black was his cold smile and the gleaming scalpel in his hand, ready to begin his gruesome work. When I woke up again, I was laying in my own bed at home. The sunlight streamed through the window and everything seemed normal. But as I sat up and ran my tongue across my teeth, I felt something odd. One of my molars was gone. And it wasn't just any molar. It was the one Dr. Hemlock had spent the most time inspecting during my last visit. A chill ran down my spine. I don't know how he let me go. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe he was finished with me. But as I sat there feeling the empty space in my mouth, I realized something. Dr. Hemlock had been playing a long game, and I was just one of his many pieces. The next time I went to the dentist, I made sure to check the name on the door. It didn't say Dr. Hemlock anymore, but the new doctor's name? It looked familiar, and the door to his office was locked. On Christmas Eve, the Johnson family was preparing for their holiday traditions, decorating the tree, baking cookies, and getting the stockings ready. But as they sat down to enjoy a warm meal, they heard a strange noise from above. At first they thought it was just the old house settling, but then it became unmistakable, the sound of heavy footsteps pacing around in the attic. The parents tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the wind or the house's old creaky beams. But as midnight approached, the noise grew louder. The children, Emily and Ben, begged their parents to check, but they brushed it off as their imagination. Still, a feeling of unease lingered in the air, like something was wrong. Later that night, Emily woke up to a soft thud coming from the attic door. She pulled her blanket over her head and tried to go back to sleep, but a low, gravelly voice broke through the silence. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. The words sent chills down her spine. Slowly, she turned her head to see a shadow standing at the foot of her bed. It was tall, with a long, scuffy beard and a tattered red suit. But there was something wrong with its face. Distorted, hollow, and pale, its eyes gleamed with a cold, malevolent hunger. "Santa?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but it slowly raised one gloved hand as if beckoning her. Just then, the father burst into the room with a flashlight, but the figure vanished into the shadows with a faint, echoing laugh. The family searched the attic the next morning, but found nothing unusual. No sign of anyone having been there. But from that Christmas Eve on, they could never shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting for them to fall asleep. On Christmas Eve, the small town of Briarwood was blanketed in snow, and the streets were quiet as families tucked in for the night. The town was used to the casual Christmas cheer, but this year something was different. A dark rumor had been swirling, one that no one wanted to believe. Just weeks before Christmas, a patient had escaped the St. Mary's Mental Hospital, a facility known for housing the most disturbed individuals. His name was Richard Graves, and he had been admitted years ago after a series of brutal crimes. He claimed to be Santa Claus, and every year during Christmas, his delusions grew more intense. The hospital staff had warned that he might try to deliver gifts to the town once again. That night, as the clock struck midnight, the Johnson family sat down by the fire, exchanging gifts and laughter. But outside in the shadows, something moved. A soft tap on the window startled them. Sarah stood up and peered outside, but saw nothing. She turned back to the room, chalking it up to the wind. But then came another tap, closer this time. Her husband, Mark, rose from his chair, frowning. "I'll check it out," he said, walking towards the door. The moment Mark stepped outside, a chill filled the room. Sarah heard him shout something. A strangled cry of surprise, and then silence. Terrified, Sarah rushed to the door and opened it just in time to see Mark stumbling back, his face pale as death. In his hands, he clutched a large red sack. He tried to say something but couldn't. His mouth opened and closed like he was choking. His eyes were wide with terror. Then she heard it. A low rumbling laugh from the darkness. The sound grew closer and a figure appeared at the edge of their porch, dressed in a tattered red suit and filthy white beard. His eyes gleamed like ice, empty and cold. "I'm here to deliver presents," the man rasped, his voice hoarse with madness. Santa doesn't forget the naughty ones. But before Sarah could scream, he lunged forward. His hands were cold as they wrapped around her throat, and his eyes were filled with twisted glee. In the moments before everything went black, Sarah saw the sack he carried swing open, and inside were the broken, lifeless bodies of every person who had ever crossed his path. When the police arrived later that night, they found the house empty, the door ajar. There were no signs of struggle, no bloodshed, only a single red mitten laying on the doorstep. And then in the distance, as they searched the woods, they heard a low voice drifting through the trees.
Hey, 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 I've come for you
The night of prom had finally arrived, and I was ready. The dress, the makeup, the excitement in the air, it all felt like a dream. But now, looking around at the sea of glittering faces, I felt something else too. Something darker. A strange electric charge buzzed in the air. It wasn't just the music or the lights. It was something more. Something I couldn't place. I didn't know what it was at first. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, prom was supposed to be the best night of my life. But then, I saw him. Standing in the corner, his gaze locked on me. He was a face I recognized but hadn't seen in a while. Darren Matthews. Quiet, unassuming. He'd always been a loner at school, always lingering at the edges, and I hadn't thought twice about him in months. Yet tonight, his eyes didn't just linger, they studied me. I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. I shook it off. This was prom. I shouldn't let anything ruin it. I danced for a while, lost in the crowd, but that feeling kept creeping in. Every time I glanced over, I couldn't escape the sensation of being watched. My heart beat a little faster with each moment, and then it happened. The lights flickered, the music stuttered, then cut out completely, plunging the gymnasium into a tense silence. Everyone murmured in confusion. My pulse quickened. The darkness wasn't comforting, it felt suffocating. I searched the room for a source of the problem, but before I could react, the lights flickered back on. In the middle of the dance floor, a body. Not just anyone. It was Carla, one of the most popular girls in school. She was crumpled on the floor, her eyes wide and vacant, blood pooling around her. It wasn't just her beauty that made the scene grotesque. It was the way her life had been ripped from her so easily. Screams erupted around the room, chaos unfolding in seconds. People ran, bumped into each other, tripped. I felt like I couldn't move, frozen in place, staring at the gruesome sight. Then, from the shadows near the door, I saw Darren again. He wasn't running. He wasn't reacting like the others. No. He was smiling. It was a smile of satisfaction. One that chilled me to my very bones. That's when I knew it. It wasn't just paranoia. Something was wrong. He was the killer. Panic set in as people scrambled to find exits. I didn't think, didn't process, just ran. I pushed my way through the crowd, my breath shallow, my vision blurry. I needed to get out, needed to get somewhere safe. But as I sprinted down the hallway, I collided with something cold and hard. I looked up. It was Darren. He hadn't just been following me. He'd been waiting for me. His dark eyes gleamed with twisted delight as he stepped closer. "You shouldn't have run," he said softly. The words sent a sickening ripple through my body. I stumbled back, but there was no one around to hear me. I was alone with him. No one could save me. "You know, prom is all about promises," he continued, his voice low, almost amused. "A night you'll never forget, right? Well, I'm about to make sure you never forget this one. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, but then I felt it. The cold touch of something sharp against my neck. His knife. It was then I realized the truth. I wasn't just the next victim. I was the last. Prom night. The culmination of everything I had dreamed of throughout high school. I had spent months planning every detail, from the dress to the perfect updo and even the perfect date, Blake. But as the clock ticked closer to the big moment, something felt off. The gymnasium at Crestwood High had been transformed into a glittering ballroom. All sparkles and fairy lights. The music was bumping, the crowd was buzzing with excitement, and everything seemed perfect. Until it didn't. The whispers started around 9:30 p.m. First, it was just a few hushed conversations near the punch bowl. Then it spread like wildfire. I overheard some girls in the bathroom talking about it, their faces pale. The local news had just reported that a dangerous killer had escaped from a nearby prison. A man named Victor Grayson, convicted of a string of brutal murders that had shocked the town 5 years ago. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but the uneasy feeling lingered. I watched as the students around me continued to dance, laugh, oblivious to the horror that was unfolding just outside the doors. But then, as I looked out the gym windows, I saw something. A figure in the shadows, tall, dark, moving with an unnatural quietness. I shook my head. It was probably just someone dressed in black, but the thought gnawed at me. I had heard the stories about Grayson, the way he stalked his victims, the way he would corner them in the dark. It was almost as if he enjoyed the fear, the power. The lights flickered once, twice. I saw some students glance nervously toward the ceiling. Then the music stopped. Silence. A cold draft swept through the gym, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. Then a voice came over the loudspeaker, calm, measured, and chilling.
Attention, everyone. This is a warning. You are not safe.
The words sent a shiver down my spine. I looked around trying to find the source of the voice, but no one seemed to know where it came from. Then, without warning, the doors to the gym burst open and a figure stepped in. His eyes gleamed with a feral hunger. The room gasped. Some students screamed, and chaos erupted. It was him, Victor Grayson. His clothes were ragged, his skin pale, and his eyes, those cold, dead eyes, were unmistakable. He moved quickly, his boots echoing through the gym, and before anyone could react, he grabbed a girl by the arm and dragged her into the shadows. I heard her scream, but it was swallowed by the noise of panic that erupted around me. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked for Blake, my date, my best friend, but he was nowhere to be seen. I tried to move to do something, anything, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. Grayson's laughter echoed from the hallway. Who's next? Who wants to join her? I snapped out of my trance and turned to run. I grabbed my phone, dialing Blake's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. I had to find him. I couldn't lose him. Not like this. I bolted out the back door to the gym, hoping to find some kind of an escape. But I wasn't alone. The figure was there, waiting for me. Victor Grayson was standing in front of me. You thought you could get away. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped. He took a step forward, raising a gleaming knife in his hand. Prom night is a night to remember. And then I heard it. A loud crash from behind me. Run! Jake's voice. He tackled Grayson with a force I didn't know he had. For a brief moment, Grayson was distracted, his attention diverted as Jake wrestled with him. I didn't wait to see who would win. I turned and ran, my heart in my throat as the sound of the struggle behind me grew louder. I reached the edge of the school grounds and kept running, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I found a group of students huddled near a streetlight. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, my body shaking uncontrollably. I didn't know if Jake made it out. I didn't know if anyone would. The night that was supposed to be the happiest of our lives had turned into a nightmare. And in that moment, I realized something. There was no escaping the horror. Not on prom night. Not with him on the loose. Lily had been looking forward to prom for months. The dress was perfect, her makeup flawless, and her date, Jake, was everything she could ask for. Everything seemed like it was going to be perfect, just like in the movies. But there was one thing Lily couldn't shake off. It started in the days leading up to prom. She received strange texts from an unknown number. The messages were unsettling. "You'll regret breaking up with me. I know where you're going tonight." Lily initially thought it was a prank, but the texts grew more frequent. The sender seemed to know intimate details about her, where she'd been, who she was with, even what she was wearing. Then it clicked. It was Ethan, her ex-boyfriend, the one she had broken up with 2 months ago when he became possessive and controlling. After the breakup, he had disappeared, or so she thought. At first, Lily didn't want to tell Jake about the text. She didn't want to ruin their night, but deep down, she felt a cold sense of dread. On the night of prom, she tried to push the anxiety aside. Jake and Lily arrived at the venue, a lavish ballroom adorned with fairy lights. The music was loud, the energy contagious, and for a brief moment, Lily forgot about the text. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, Ethan, standing by the far wall staring at her with an unsettling intensity. His expression was unreadable, but the chill crawling down her spine was undeniable. He shouldn't have been here. He wasn't invited. Lily's heart raced. She grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him towards the dance floor, trying to shake off the panic. But Ethan followed, waving through the crowd, his eyes never leaving her. She kept looking over her shoulder, but he was always there, lurking in the shadows. Jake noticed her unease. "What's wrong? Who is that guy?" Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain. "It's Ethan, my ex." Jake's face tightened with concern. "Why is he here? Did you invite him?" "No," Lily said, her voice shaking. "He shouldn't be here." The music seemed to blur, the laughter and chatter fading into the background as Lily's fear consumed her. She could feel Ethan's eyes on her like a vice. Every few minutes, she would catch a glimpse of him standing in the same spot, watching her, never blinking. "Let's leave," Jake said, pulling her closer. Lily didn't argue. She wanted to get out away from Ethan. They quickly made their way to the exit. But as they stepped outside into the cool night air, they saw Ethan standing by her car. Jake stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Hey Ethan, leave us alone. You've got no reason to be here." Ethan didn't respond. He only stepped closer, his presence growing more menacing. "You think you can just move on? You can't leave me, Lily. Not like this." His voice was low, almost a growl. Lily wanted to run, but she felt frozen, trapped. Jake tried to push past him, but Ethan grabbed his arm with terrifying strength, his fingers digging into Jake's skin. "I said, she's mine," Ethan hissed. Suddenly, the sound of approaching sirens pierced the night. A police car was driving down the street. Ethan released Jake and took a step back, his eyes filled with malice. He turned and vanished into the darkness, disappearing like a shadow. Lily and Jake rushed into the car, shaking, the adrenaline making their hearts race. They didn't look back. The rest of the night was a blur, but the feeling of being watched, of being hunted, never left her. As they pulled away from the venue, Lily received one last text. "This isn't over." The words haunted in her mind as the night turned colder and darker. Ethan might have disappeared from sight, but Lily knew he wasn't far. She couldn't escape him. Not now. Not ever. When Evelyn signed up for the exclusive experience at Blackthorn Zoo, she had no idea what she was walking into. The website promised something unique, something thrilling, a chance to get up close and personal with the animals in a way that was impossible anywhere else. A few photos with the big cats, some private encounters with primates, and a VIP tour of the most exotic exhibits. It sounded like a dream come true, especially for someone like Evelyn, who had always loved animals. She had heard whispers about Blackthorn, a secluded zoo deep in the countryside. Some people said it was different, but it was the way they made it sound, like a secret club for those who truly understood and appreciated nature. When she arrived, the place seemed ordinary at first. The zoo was quiet with an unnatural stillness that made her uneasy. There were no other visitors, only the guide, a man named Hector, greeted her. His smile was warm, but his eyes, there was something off about his eyes. A little too bright, like he could see right through her.
Welcome to Blackthorn,
he said, guiding her through the gates.
We believe in providing a truly immersive experience, something that goes beyond the ordinary.
As they walked through the winding paths of the zoo, Evelyn noticed the animals weren't acting like they should. The lions stared at her with an unnerving, intelligent eyes. The snakes slithered in a pattern that seemed deliberate. Even the birds in their cages were silent, watching her closely.
There's a very special bond between human beings and animals here. One that goes beyond mere observation.
Evelyn didn't know what he meant, but she nodded politely, eager to see more exotic areas of the zoo. They entered a building at the far end of the zoo, one that wasn't on the usual tour. It was dark inside, with a strange metallic smell in the air, as if the building hadn't been properly ventilated. Hector led her down a narrow corridor lit by dim, flickering lights.
Here,
Hector said, opening a door to a large, sterile room. It looked like an operating theater, but with cages lining the walls instead of medical equipment. Evelyn's stomach tightened as she stepped inside, her heart beating faster with every step.
everything is part of the experience. We've developed a process that allows people to truly connect with the animals, to become them.
Evelyn frowned. Become them? What do you mean? Before Hector could respond, there was a soft noise behind her, a low growl. She spun around and froze. In one of the cages, something was moving. At first, it looked like a man, but as her eyes adjusted to the dark, she realized it was no man at all. The figure inside was hunched over, its skin slick and dark, like that of an animal, its face contorted, human in shape but covered in patches of fur. The eyes were the worst, wild, primal, and glowing with an unnatural yellow light. Evelyn staggered back, her throat tightening. What is that? What's happening?
This?
Hector said, stepping beside her.
This is the true experience. The fusion of human and animal. You see, at Blackthorn, we don't just observe nature. We become part of it. We merge the two.
Suddenly, the cages around the room began to rattle. From the shadows, other figures emerged. People, or what had once been people. Some were crawling on all fours, their bodies twisted in grotesque ways, while others stood upright, their limbs elongated, covered in patches of fur and scales. One woman had the face of a wolf, her mouth full of sharp, yellow teeth. Another man had the head of a vulture, his eyes hollow, following Evelyn's every move. Evelyn screamed and backed away towards the door, but Hector blocked her path, his expression eerily calm.
It's too late to leave, Evelyn. Once you've come this far, there's no turning back. You can join us, you know. Become something greater, something more.
The figures in the cages began to move closer, their inhuman eyes fixed on her. The woman with the wolf's face growled low in her throat. Evelyn could hear the sound of something approaching, a heavy, padded step that reverberated in her chest. She turned to run, but as she moved towards the door, it slammed shut with a deafening noise. Panic rose in her throat as the creatures circled her, their twisted forms closing in.
Don't worry. It won't hurt at first. The transformation is gradual. We start small, just a few changes, but soon you will see the world in a way you never could before.
As the others reached out for her, their clawed hands brushing against her skin, Evelyn's mind screamed for escape, but it was already happening. She felt it. The itch beneath her skin, the aching pull in her muscles, the shift of bones beneath her flesh. Her vision blurred as she stumbled back, and in that moment, she realized that they had truly met. It wasn't just an experience, it was an experiment. It was just past dark when the rain began to fall thin and cold, as if the sky was bleeding out its last drops. Emily had been to the zoo all day, photographing the animals for a school project. It was one of those places most people didn't give a second thought to. The kind of place where the cages seemed comforting, familiar, and the animals were always just far enough away to keep things safe. She couldn't put her finger on it, the way the animals watched her, their eyes cold, unblinking, as though they were waiting for something. She'd noticed it for years since she was a child, but never really said anything about it. The zookeepers were friendly enough too, if a little distant, but tonight the entire place felt wrong. She was walking along the winding path towards the reptile house when something caught her attention from the corner of her eye. It was the jaguar's cage. The sleek, black feline that had been laying still for hours was now pacing rapidly back and forth, its eyes fixed on Emily in a way that almost seemed predator. She stopped, watching it move in a rhythm that was almost too precise, too deliberate. As she moved closer, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. There was a man inside the enclosure. At first she thought it was a trick of the light, or perhaps a shadow cast by the jaguar's movement. But then, the figure became clearer. He was crouched low to the ground, mimicking the jaguar's movement. Slow, deliberate, almost animal-like in his grace. His hands were curled into claws, and his head tilted slightly to the side as if he were studying her. The man's eyes were completely black. Heart pounding, Emily stepped back, suddenly aware that the zoo had grown unnervingly quiet. The usual sounds of distant chatter and animal calls were gone. The air was heavy, suffocating, and she could feel her pulse echoing in her ears. The man in the cage stood up, his movement jerking unnatural. His body seemed to stretch in ways that didn't belong to a human, elongating slightly as he pressed his face against the bars, his eyes never leaving her. The jaguar, meanwhile, had stopped moving entirely. It was just standing there, watching. "Help!" a voice whispered behind her, and Emily spun around. No one was there. She took a hesitant step back, still staring at the man, but before she could turn to leave, the jaguar made a strange noise. The sound sent a chill up her spine. She glanced down at its feet and saw something she hadn't noticed before. It was dragging its own shadow. The jaguar's dark figure seemed to writhe like a living thing, trying to escape from the ground beneath it. Then, as if responding to the creature's distress, the man in the cage growled, an inhuman sound, and something inside Emily shifted. For a split second, she saw something horrific in the man's eyes, something ancient, something predator. She turned and ran, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't stop until she reached the main gate, but as she fumbled with the lock, a distant sound of a laugh echoed in her ear. It wasn't human. It was low, animalistic, and it made her stomach twist. She finally made it out of the zoo and looked back, half expecting to see a man with the black eyes standing at the gate watching her. But there was nothing, only the eerie silence of the night. Weeks later, Emily returned to the zoo, hoping to make sense of what had happened. She had almost convinced herself it was a nightmare, or a trick of the mind. But when she asked the staff about the jaguar's cage, the zookeeper's face twisted with confusion.
There hasn't been a jaguar here for years,
He said.
and no one's worked the night shift in months. Why would you ask that?
Emily's heart sank as she walked away, her thoughts spinning. And then, just as she was about to leave the zoo for good, she saw him again, the man with the black eyes. He was standing at the very back of the zoo at the edge of the abandoned animal enclosures. This time, he wasn't mimicking a jaguar. He was smiling. But his teeth, those teeth weren't human at all. It was supposed to be a fun, laid-back evening with friends to check out a local band. I had heard about them for months, but something about the venue felt off. It wasn't the kind of place you'd go for a big show, but more of a hole-in-the-wall dive bar where the lights were always too dim and the air smelled like stale beer and sweat. It was the kind of place that felt like it had secrets, you know? But it wasn't later until I realized how true that was. I had just turned 22, and my friends and I were excited for a low-key night of good music. The moment we walked in, I felt like I was stepping into a forgotten world. The venue was packed with people, mostly locals, huddled together in the dark corners of the room. The band was still setting up on stage, and the energy was buzzing, until we had to pass through the security checkpoint at the door. This was a smaller venue, so they checked IDs to make sure everyone was of drinking age. And there was a guy manning the entrance. His name was Greg. He was in his mid-40s, a bit scuffy, with a worn-out black t-shirt that had the venue's logo on it. He had looked like he had seen his fair share of late-night parties. I showed him my ID, and he took it with a long, deliberate stare, like he was studying it. Odd. But I just brushed it off as quirky security guy. "Enjoy the show," he said, handing me back my ID. But there was something in the way he said it, almost like he was trying too hard to be friendly. The night went on and the band was great. The crowd was energetic, the music loud, and the atmosphere was perfect, until I noticed something strange. As I was walking to the bar to grab a drink, I spotted Greg standing near the edge of the room, watching me. I caught his eyes for a split second, and he quickly looked away, almost like he had been caught doing something he shouldn't have. I shook it off thinking it was nothing, but as the night wore on, I noticed Greg's gaze linger on me more and more. It wasn't just a casual glance either. His eyes followed me around the room, and when I caught him staring again, he didn't even try to look away. It felt invasive. I tried to ignore it, but when my friends and I were getting ready to leave, something even stranger happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket as we were walking out the door. I pulled it out and saw a Facebook notification. It was a friend request from Greg, the security guard. How did he even find me on Facebook? I immediately thought it was some kind of mistake, maybe a coincidence. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it didn't make sense. We had only exchanged a brief interaction earlier that night. There was no way he could have known my full name or enough details to find me online. But sure enough, there it was. His profile picture was him standing in front of the venue, the same logo on his t-shirt in the background. That's when the uneasy feeling in my stomach started to grow. I accepted his request, curious, but a little unsettled. Almost immediately, he started messaging me. At first, it was casual, asking if I had a good time at the show, complimenting the band, and making small talk. But the tone of the messages quickly shifted. His questions became oddly personal. He asked where I worked, where I lived, and what I'd like to do in my free time. I tried to steer the conversation away, but it didn't work. The more I didn't respond, the more persistent he became. That was when I knew something was wrong. I started looking through his Facebook profile for any clues about who this guy really was. That's when I discovered something chilling. He had shared multiple posts over the past few weeks about the venue, and more specifically about me. There were photos of the night of the show, pictures of the crowd, blurry shots of the band, and one of me. He had taken a picture of me from across the room. My heart dropped when I saw it, and I immediately blocked him. A few days later, I got another message, this time from a different Facebook account. It was Greg again. Only this time, it was a picture of him standing in front of my apartment building. "I just wanted to see if you were home," the message read. I felt a surge of panic. How did he find my place? How had he figured out where I lived? I was terrified. And then it had finally dawned on me. The long, drawn-out stare when he was checking my ID, and that he was memorizing everything off of it. I contacted the venue, told them everything, and insisted they do something about it. They assured me they'd look into it, but part of me knew they'd probably just let it go. I don't know if Greg was ever caught or if he truly stopped watching me. So if you ever go to a small venue, watch out. You never know who's watching you or who might be keeping track of your every move long after the show ends. And if you get a Facebook friend request from a security guard, don't accept it. You might just regret it. This happened to me about 2 years ago, and to this day, I avoid that part completely. I live in a quiet suburb outside of Portland. Not much goes on here. The kind of town where people leave their doors unlocked during the day. I have a German Shepherd named Loki, and one of our favorite places to go was the dog park, a few blocks from my apartment. It's not very big, but it's usually empty in the mornings, which is perfect because Loki doesn't do well with small dogs. One Sunday morning around 7:30 a.m., I took him there like usual. It was overcast, kind of foggy, and the air was dead silent. As I walked in, I noticed somebody already there. An older man standing on the far fence. He was wearing a black trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat, even though it wasn't raining. No dog, just standing there facing the park like he was watching something. I figured he was waiting for someone. Loki was off-leash doing his usual lap around the perimeter when I heard the man speak. "You believe in salvation?" I turned. He was looking directly at me now, expression blank. His voice was deep, flat. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. What? He started walking towards me, and I immediately called Loki back. The man reached into his coat, and I stepped back instinctively, but he just pulled out a small black book. A Bible, I assumed. He held it out. "You should read this. The end is nearer than you think." I didn't take it. Something about the way he spoke, so monotone, like he was trying to convert me. More like he was warning me, almost like a threat. "No thanks," I said, and started walking away. He didn't follow me. He just stood there staring. As I got to the gate, I looked back. He was kneeling now. No dog. His arms were outstretched, palms up, and his head was tilted back like he was praying to the sky. I grabbed Loki and left quickly. The next day, I came back in the evening. Figured it was just a weird encounter, nothing more. But when I got there, he was back. The same coat, the same hat, standing in the same spot. This time, there was a dog with him. A huge black Doberman that just sat perfectly next to him, also staring straight ahead. Didn't move, didn't bark, like it was trained to be a statue. I didn't even get out of the car. I just sat there and watched. The man turned his head slowly, as if he knew I was watching, and smiled. Not a friendly smile. It was wrong, like it didn't fit his face. That night, I had a nightmare. I was in the dog park alone. It was dark, fog everywhere. I saw the man standing in the middle with his arms outstretched again, except this time, there were other figures around him, all kneeling, whispering something I couldn't understand. In the dream, Loki growled, then bolted toward them and disappeared into the fog. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. That was the last time I went to that park. I told a few of my friends about it, and one of them actually went there to check it out. He said he saw the guy too, and when he tried to talk to him, the man just smiled and said, "We're gathering. You should bring your dog next time." No one has seen him in a few months now, but the weird thing is, people in the neighborhood have started reporting missing pets. Flyers on every corner. Dogs that slipped leashes and never came back. One woman swears she saw a group of people in the park late at night, standing in a circle, chanting. I don't know what that guy was trying to do, but I know it wasn't about religion. Whatever it wasn't human. James had always been curious about the dark web. He knew the risk, but he was an experienced hacker, confident in his skills to stay hidden. One night, while browsing through an encrypted forum, he stumbled upon an unusual thread titled, "Want to know who's been watching you? Pay the price." Intrigued, he clicked the link, which led him to a mysterious password-protected site. The only thing on the page was a single sentence: "You've already been marked." James laughed it off as a prank, but that night, strange things began happening. His computer acted erratically, files he didn't open appeared in his directories, the cursor moved on its own, and his webcam light flickered on, even though it was supposed to be off. Then, a message appeared on his screen. "I see you. Do you see me?" He froze. The message was too precise, too personal. Before he could react, a file began downloading on his computer. It was an image. His own face, from his webcam, taken while he was asleep. The timestamp was from just minutes ago. Panicking, he tried to disconnect from the internet, but the system refused to shut down. The hacker had control now. A final message flashed on the screen. "You shouldn't have looked. I'm already in your home." Suddenly, his phone rang. It was a blocked number. Trembling, James answered. A voice, soft but clear, whispered into the phone.
"I'm standing right behind you."
He spun around, heart racing. The room was empty. But when he looked back at his screen, there was a new image. A shadowy figure standing just outside his window. Anna had just finished a long day of work and sat down to check her email on her laptop. As she opened the screen, she noticed something odd. A strange folder on her desktop titled, "Open Me." She hadn't downloaded anything recently, nor had she seen this folder before. Curious, she clicked on it. The folder was empty except for a single file. "You're being watched." Hesitant but intrigued, Anna clicked it open. Her webcam light flickered to life, and the screen went black for a second. When it came back, she saw herself, sitting in front of the laptop looking confused. But the image wasn't from her own perspective. It was as if someone had else taken the picture of her. Her heart raced. She quickly closed the file and tried to shut down the computer, but the screen froze. Suddenly, the cursor moved on its own, clicking through files she had never opened. Then, a new window popped up. "Stop trying to hide. I see you." Her webcam light blinked again. She glanced up at the screen, only to see a face staring back at her from the webcam, a distorted, grinning face with hollow eyes. Frozen in terror, Anna backed away from the laptop. The figure on the screen blinked. Then the message appeared. "It's too late to turn off now." The screen flickered once more, and this time, her own voice spoke from the speakers, whispering, "I know where you live." Jake had always been fascinated about the dark web. He read about it, watched documentaries, and even dabbled a bit. Nothing too risky, just exploring some deep web forums. One night, he stumbled across a thread titled, "For the Brave. Want to see who's watching you?" The post was brief, but chilling.
I can track anyone. For the right price, I'll show you who's been following you. You'd be surprised how easy it is to find someone.
Jake scoffed. The idea of someone tracking him seemed ridiculous. He didn't use his real name, had VPNs, encrypted everything, but curiosity gnawed at him. The post offered a link to a secure chat room. He clicked it. The chat room was empty except for one message from an anonymous user. "You really want to see?" Laughing at himself for being paranoid, Jake replied, "Sure, prove it." Moments later, the screen flickered and the room filled with text.
I've already traced you. You're in an apartment. Alone. It's 2:45 a.m.
Jake's heart skipped. His webcam light flickered on. The cursor raced across the screen, opening files he never remembered saving. "Why are you watching me?" Jake typed, his fingers trembling. The response was immediate.
I've been watching you for weeks. You think I don't know your habits? You think you're safe?
Jake's computer started freezing, windows popping open and closing without him touching the keyboard. Then, a video file appeared. He clicked on it. It was shaky, blurry, video of him walking down the street from earlier that day, taken from behind a tree. Jake slammed his laptop shut, unplugged it, his heart pounding, sweat beating off his forehead. He rushed to the window and peered out into the darkness, but there was nothing. A notification pinged on his phone. It was from an unknown number. His hand shook as he opened the message.
I'm not done yet. You're next.
The lights in his apartment flickered.